July 21st, 2014.
Admit it, even the most pacifistic among us love it when we see the Enterprise cut loose and blow the hell out of a Klingon ship, the Borg, or anything else really. And at some point, we've all wanted to try it. That's where games come in. All the way back to 1979, when a little company in Amarillo, Texas called Task Force Games introduced us to a Starship combat game based on Star Trek the original series and the animated series, as well as the Star Trek technical manual. Now that game has evolved into Starfleet Battles and has garnered a following worldwide. Later in 1984, FASA created the Starship Combat Tactical Simulator, a companion piece to their role-playing game and much simpler to play than good old Starfleet Battles, which was anything but simple. This is Treknicity.
Welcome to Treknicity, a Star Trek podcast where we do the deep dive on all things Star Trek, even the things that you don't care about. I'm your host, Mike Raper, coming to you today from North Carolina. With me are my co-hosts, Patrick Murray, joining us from Ohio, Lars DeSenza in sunny California, and we're also joined in this episode by a very special guest who's written for the most current iteration of Star Trek role-playing games, Star Trek Adventures, as well as some other works along the way. So joining us in this episode, very special guest, Patrick Goodman.
You mean upside down? Let's try this again. I am doing so good today.
That was perfect.
How are you doing today?
I don't think that introduction could get any better.
That's perfect. It was on camera and everything.
That's awesome.
I only had the first to pull up, so close enough.
Oh my goodness. Oh well, I've got
perfect.
I got the first edition and second edition behind me on the shelf behind me. So. Oh my goodness, that's just
I was the only
brilliant.
one that thought
I couldn't have asked for a better introduction. Wow, that's perfect. Perfect.
Hopefully
Patrick,
it doesn't get me fired.
not at all. No, but welcome to the show. We're always glad to have you.
Thank you kindly. How's it going up?
It's
South Carolina way.
That's North Carolina, but
As the case may be.
He didn't ask about North Carolina. He asked you how South Carolina's doing. So come on, man, get with it.
I'm even in training, man. I'm trying to live up to the hype.
You'll get there.
If you work hard enough, you can be evil like the other Patrick.
Exactly. Patrick. There you go.
Yeah.
It'd help if the beard was darker. I'm sure. When it actually showed up.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine evil Spock or mirror Spock with a white goatee. That would have just taken all the teeth out of his character.
Yeah, that would be
Only we're
evil.
fast
That
with
would be
Sharpie.
evil Sarek.
Yeah, it probably would be.
Or evil, evil Saval from Enterprise.
Oh
Yes.
yes.
Well, fellas, so today we're going to talk about something that's been on the list for us to talk about for a while, and that's the Starship combat games. Now, these are not computer games, though. The games Starfleet Command, all three versions of that did evolve from the content and the way that Starfleet Battles works. But so a little history on the two games that we're thinking about mostly today. So Starfleet Battles started all the way back in 1979, and it's still in production. The company is still running. It started out with Task Force Games.
Yeah.
And then Task Force Games closed, and some of the guys that worked there created the company Amarillo Design Bureau, and they got the rights. And since from that day to this, there's been just so much stuff they've made for it. I mean, currently right now in production, I checked, just in production, not the stuff that's out of production now, there's 53 existing add-on modules and the basic set and the advanced kind of core rule set. They've got miniatures. They've got all these spin-off games like Federation and Empire, which is more of a strategic game. Federation Commander, which is like SFB Light. But they do have almost a cult following. The people who love the game, they love the game. And they're on the message boards talking about it. They love the game. And a lot of these people have been playing for decades, right?
Message boards.
It's it has to be one of the most complicated games I've ever seen. I would not be surprised if at this point, if the total count of rules is a good 1,000 pages. It's
Easily.
so much stuff. Yeah. But it's a weird history because the game was based, obviously it came out in 79. The only thing that was out was, of course, the original show and then the animated show, and then the Franz Josef technical manual. So a lot of the stuff that's in the show, it doesn't show up, or the game doesn't show up anywhere else. Like they have the Zinti, for example.
Oh, yeah.
The cat people,
The Kazinti, yeah.
um,
If I'm not mistaken, they actually brought...
We have Kazinti.
Yeah, I would say that was one of the few things that actually made the bridged, right, between Starfleet battles and the actual canon Star Trek stuff, because the Kazinti was the Kazinti showed up in the animated series.
No,
Kazinti
she
showed
was
up in the animated series.
Yes.
Yes, the crewman was a Cation.
No. I mean, there was MRAS.
also
It
Kazinti.
was
Yeah.
a Cation, but there was a Kazinti.
Yeah. Yeah.
The episode was called "The Slaver Weapon." It was written by Larry Niven,
Hmm.
who created the Man Kazin Wars and the known space saga, and
Yeah.
he basically gave a version of the Kazinti to Star Trek in the animated series, but with all the things that went wrong in the 70s, nobody seemed to realize it. When we were doing the first edition core rulebook for Star Trek Adventures, I was told you can do anything you want with the animated series. Don't touch the slaver weapon. That's the only thing that you can't touch. And then, like 4 books later, in I think it was the Beta Quadrant supplement that came out, they brought up the Kazinti. It's like, yeah, they changed their minds. And then Larry Niven wrote a letter, said, look, you guys can do things with these. So, I mean, the Kazinti have been part of Trek for, good Lord, 70, 50 odd years.
Yeah. Since the animated show. Yeah.
Just leave out the anything from the episode that's not good.
Yeah. But
solved.
because of the, it's kind of like at that point, the Starfleet Battles Trek universe diverges quite a bit from the universe we know from television, and they're not allowed to touch any of it. Like they can't use any of the designs from the motion picture, any of the movies, or anything like that. So it's a completely separate timeline and universe. And of course, it was built around the idea of you're playing a game. So it's got all these different races and weapons that you would not see on screen on television.
You also can't use the personalities. You can't use Kirk or Spock.
Yeah, that's right.
I had a long talk with Steve. Fun fact, I'm from Amarillo.
So you know Steve Cole.
We've met several times,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. I used to, back in the day, was pretty heavy into it. I used to sculpt miniatures for the game.
Ah, cool.
And I think I've got a few published SSDs out there too. I used to really enjoy that. But then, life happens and you stop playing because it's just too damn complicated.
It is. It's a very complicated game.
It is a very realistic game. It's very complicated. It is turn based, but it's not you go, I go, you go, I go. It's whoever's going the fastest may go multiple times before you go. And that's just the bewildering array of things that can be done in one turn would blow your mind if you've never played it. I mean, it's everything everybody talks about when they watch a movie. Why didn't somebody just beam a bomb onto the ship? Guess what? You can do that in this game. Why didn't somebody load a shuttle with explosives and ram it into the ship? You can do that in this game. It's insane the amount of rules that are in this game. But it's definitely a work of love. The two Steves, Steve Cole and Steve Petrick. They've been doing this for years. They love the game and they love their players, but it is not for the faint of heart to get into. So if any of you guys actually played this game,
I have never personally played it. I've watched people play it, and I remember that it melted my teenage brain.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably play it. I play anything.
Probably not in 40 years.
Yeah.
Played it when I was in high school. Played it a little bit in the Air Force, but by that time I was going pretty whole hog with FASA and had gotten in.
Yeah.
You know, when I was doing any ship battles, it was the combat simulator.
Yeah.
But by that time, I was mostly diving into the role playing side of things.
Yeah, and it was the ADB kind of did it backwards. So FASA started with a role playing game, and then they came up with a combat simulator as a way to kind of quickly handle Starship combat, especially on a larger scale. ADB did it backwards. They had Starfleet Battles for years, and then they came up with their own role-playing game. And it's okay. It's not bad. I played it a couple of times. I honestly don't remember much about it, except the funniest line in any game rule book I've ever seen. It was they described red shirts as they exist to show how the monster works.
About right.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
I mean,
right.
That's surprisingly accurate.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that one.
But and we kind of, Patrick, we went through the same thing, right? We played in high school, and then FASA came out with their game, and we'll try it because they have like the cool looking miniatures, right? Because they could use the stuff from the motion picture and Wrath of Khan and Star Trek 3, so the stuff you could recognize. And you could play 5 games of that in the time you could play 1 game of Starfleet Battles. So much faster. And honestly, the production looked better. The counters for SFB were square, very small, and just had silhouettes on them. The counters for the Tactical Combat Simulator, they were bigger, they were hexagonal, and they had these really beautiful color artwork of the ships on them. So it was it was prettier to play, and it was just easier to play.
And to be fair, sometimes easier is a little bit better.
Well, sure, if you're trying to have fun. I mean, I don't want to be an actuary trying to play a damn game. And that's what it felt like with SFB. You got a stack of rule books like this. Let me go look up, this rule somewhere that explains this one minute thing that the game is turning on.
I mean, my experience with these games started with the FASA version. So, and I still remember back then thinking to myself that the energy, the shields, the energy, the weapons, all of that, the superstructure tracking and all that on those sheets was like, it made me, I'm probably one of the reasons that led to me wearing glasses so thick that I can see backwards in time with them. Because they are it's so small, so itty bitty. I thought about bringing it out for this episode, but I'd be honest with you, the box is in such bad shape that I'm pretty sure that it would cease to exist if I tried to open it.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
No, I think my stuff is somewhere on a floor somewhere, and I have no idea. And I don't think I could find it in a day and a half.
That doesn't surprise me in the least.
But if I could, I'd whip it out.
I would. The book?
Oh my God. See, here we go.
Yep.
You know what to do, Lars.
Jeez, man.
Go ahead. Put it up. There we go. If you have any complaints, this is where you can contact us.
Yeah,
this is why they decided to call me Evil Patrick, just for lack of confusion.
At least one episode.
I was going to say that probably the only thing you're not going to find on your floor is probably your floor.
Oh, there it is. I can see my floor.
It's a small part of it.
Here, let me show you. No,
it's like it's like it's maybe about like 2 inches square, 4 inches square.
There's paths.
Yeah, sure there are.
There would have to be, wouldn't there?
Yeah, it's like he cut past by walking over through stuff and destroying things as he went along. But yeah,
no, I just jump over. I could also just jump over stuff.
Yeah, I remember watching. I remember watching people play this game, playing the Starfleet Battles, and just being absolutely dumbfounded by the sheer amount of trackable resources and things of that nature. Because, I mean, being the child of the 70s and 80s that I am, I kind of grew up with the woo, America good, everybody bad thing. And our military was the mightiest. And of course, everybody I knew growing up in Ohio had an absolute let's just say a stand-up performance for when Top Gun came out. So the idea of, and of course, there was also Battlestar Galactica. So the concept of things like fighter craft and, minor craft that could be launched from a larger vessel just tickled me pink. And I just thought to myself, wow, that's nuts.
Yeah, and Starfleet Battles definitely has them. They introduced carriers or carrier type ships. So you got regular fighters, heavy fighters, interceptor fighters. You've got AWACS control shuttles. You've got ECM shuttles for jamming. And then you have these things called fast patrol ships, where they're kind of like mini ships. They're bigger than a fighter, but they're not like an actual ship. And it's just, it's just crazy how much stuff, and when you play this game, there's this paper form, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a resource tracking form where you start out, this is how much power I have. And here's this laundry list. Well, that's the damage display. This was the sheet where you were actually writing down how much energy you were using for different things.
Oh, I always counted that as part of the same thing because I can't remember what it was originally supposed to be called.
I don't remember what it was called.
The thing that always amazed me about the game was the number of people who remembered all this crap. It's like
that would have been me.
If they were playing, say they were playing the Lyrans. They knew that crap backwards and forwards, and they knew most of your stuff too, because they were trying to fight you with it. And but it's just like, and they'd be spouting stuff off, and I wasn't playing, so I'm flipping through the rule book, going, "Do they know what they're talking about?" And it turns out, they did.
Yeah. Well, they again, it's literally like being an accountant. It is a spreadsheet, and the way the game works, it's one turn. I'm not joking. One turn is 32 what they call impulses long. So you literally go through each one at a time. You move, you move, you move two, you move. You don't move because you're too slow, and then within each impulse, you can shoot at each other. Whatever you want to do. I mean, it can take an hour to go through one turn of that game.
Wow.
So it's crazy detailed, how much detail is in it. And if you like that kind of thing, then hey, jump on it. It's great. And to be fair, you can play a stripped down version of it where you don't need 900 pages of the 1,000 pages of rules. But it doesn't take long before you see cool stuff you want to try. Like, oh, wow, like you mentioned the Lyrans, and they have the expanding sphere generator, this sphere of energy that just goes out in a circle and blows up whatever it hits. Well, who doesn't want to try that? So you got to learn those rules,
I have an expanding sphere weapon as well, but it usually only appears after I eat Taco Bell. That's more of a cloud than a sphere, but hey,
I think that's from D&D. That's called Cloud Kill.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Yeah, but again, it's a fun game. It really is. But I think where FASA picked up and they didn't was just the fact that FASA had rights to the things that you were seeing on the screen now. FASA had the Excelsior. SFB did not. FASA had the Enterprise A. SFB did not. And I think that people wanted to play with things that they knew. And I wonder how much was pulled away from them and people jumped on, the FASA game. But in fairness, FASA is long dead and gone. SFB is still going.
Yeah, it's nuts. It is. I mean,
Steve is when Decipher had the license these many years ago, I'm talking like nearly 20, more than 20. I was running a fan site for the Decipher game, and one guy did a conversion of some Starfleet battle stuff into Decipher terms. I've never had a C&D so fast in my life.
Oh, I'll bet.
But I mean, you know, to be fair to Steve, he has to do that.
Sure.
His contract is very specific on what he can and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And he guards that jealously, and I don't blame him for that.
No, I don't either.
But that, I mean, like, it's like we put that thing out. It's like an hour later, I'm checking my emails. Like, you couldn't even give me a call. It's like,
yeah.
Sorry, Steve.
Yeah. Well, you know, again, you're right. They have to be. You know, that is their livelihood. I mean, ADB at least at one point was making some other games, but let's face it, you know, Starfleet Battle's their meat and potatoes. If they ever got in trouble over that,
I don't know that ADB ever did. I know Task Force had, you know, at least half a dozen games. They had Starfire. They had SFB.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking.
They had 3 or 4 other things. I mean, I played Starfire with some of the guys from. I lived in Amarillo for years, and so I mean, I knew at least casually a lot of these guys in the gaming circles there, and it was an interesting.
Oh yeah, but they also they had a game. I've still got this one in a binder. It was called Battle Wagon, and it was like World War II Navy ship combat, and it was like a super stripped down version of SFB. But it was the same concept. You had the SSD ship system display for the ship, and you moved by turns. But it was much easier to play, and it was a load of fun.
Yeah, Battle Wagon was fun, but yeah, I mean, but I think by the time Task Force folded and Steve went off with Amarillo Design Bureau and SFB, I think that's. You know, the Starfleet universe is really all that ADB has ever done between the combat games and Prime Directive.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I was just remembering it wrong. I knew it was the same guys, but just a different.
It's easy to mess that up because it's like there's a very wibbly wobbly bit in between those two. And I'd kind of lost touch with it by that time because you know I was in England and Nebraska when some of this stuff was going down. So
yeah, well, they got a little bit of, and people don't know it, that the game got kind of a resurgence when it was turned into a real-time strategy game for your computer.
Oh, Starfleet Command.
Starfleet Command. It's the exact same rules. If you look up the rules of how things work, like how shields work, how weapons work, the damage that they do, all the numbers and everything are exactly the same. It's just the computer's doing a lot of that work for you.
Which makes it a lot more accessible.
It makes it a lot easier. And I still don't know how they did this. And Patrick, you may know. They did get rights to use the images from the Trek movies and specifically the Trek movies. So you do have like the Excelsior is in there as a battle cruiser. The Enterprise is a heavy cruiser. The Reliant is a light cruiser. But they're in there. The Klingon ships too.
Yeah, I don't know how that particular bit of licensing happened, and by that time I wasn't anywhere close enough to go ask. So.
Yeah. But I was so surprised. Yeah.
I was big into Starfleet Command, the computer games when they came out. The last one that came out, which they are still kind of releasing some updates and mods for to run on modern computers. I think GOG, goodoldgames.com, actually sells Starfleet Command 3 at least. And then there are updates to run the game more smoothly on higher end systems. But I remember very distinctly that the cold open for Starfleet Command 3 was actually narrated by Sir Patrick Stewart. And so it features the Galaxy class Enterprise, the Klingon, the more modern Klingon ships, Romulan warbirds, all that stuff. It was kind of neat. It was a lot of fun, but man, probably about as complicated for a computer game as Starfleet Battles was as a board game.
Yeah, you really had to slow the speed down to be able to keep up with what was going on.
Absolutely.
But I will say this: I don't know who did the art design, but they made some gorgeous ship designs. Especially, I thought the Romulan ships were absolutely gorgeous. They really were.
Yeah, they really were.
But it was a great game. But I still, to this day, I do not know how that happened. But it was funny because the Kzinti or Zinti, I'm not sure how if it's a silent.
It's Kzinti.
Okay. They're in the game. Their ships are in the game, but they're called the Miradorn, I think, because they couldn't use the name Kzinti. So I was like, okay, so the game it comes from can't use the artwork you're using. You can use the artwork they can't, but you can't use the name of one of the races they have. Yeah, let's just make this confusing.
It's they like I was saying at the beginning, it was a real mess there for a while. Once it got cleaned up, and it's only gotten cleaned up since the new era of Trek started coming out, because they used Kzinti in Picard season 1. They mentioned them specifically, and then you've got on Lower Decks you've got Kzinti crew member.
But he mostly just shows up on the screen, to be fair.
Oh yeah, he says almost nothing, but he gets into trouble with our main cast plenty of times. He just doesn't say anything. But I mean, they've only really started using them, fairly regularly in the past 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, again, Starfleet Battles, for as complicated as it is, and it does have a strong following, and it's still going. FASA, they had the one box set, and they had a few, maybe 5 or 6 books to go with it.
Yeah.
They called them, what was it?
The Starship recognition manuals.
Recognition manuals. Yeah. Like
the ship recognition manuals, which I still have over on my shelf and use them on a regular basis for.
And there are websites that are dedicated to the FASA game, like where they're still making the rules for the ships, the statistics for different ships. Yeah. And there is, and I have never tried it. There's supposedly kind of a home-brewed online version of that game where you can play it on the computer. I've never seen it. I've just read about it.
Yeah. I used to have quite a bit of the FASA game itself. Everything from the actual role-playing game manuals, the main core manuals, like the officer's manual, and I think it was the Game Master's manual. And I honestly don't remember, but again, I could, if I pulled it out, I could tell you. But I had a number of the scenarios, including the Return to Axanar, which is kind of funny. But
we won't get into that.
Yeah, no. But I just remember how, I literally lose count as to how many nights that Patrick and I, evil Patrick, sorry, and I spent at his family's business on one of those big fold-out tables playing the Starship Tactical Combat Simulator. Even to the point where, and I still have the book here. I have the actual original from when I was a teenager, sans its very nice cover, the ship construction manual. So you could sit there and you could build your own starships. And of course, it was a contest for us to see who could build the biggest and most badass ships, and just basically pound each other into a fine mist over several hours.
Because that's the whole idea, is to blow each other up.
Oh yeah. We'd be building ships with like 8 warp engines and
that's what friends do.
That's right. And it would be like, oh yeah, because every time you added a warp engine, you you got more power points and of course you build it with as much superstructure as you could, and it's like, oh, and it was the version of the game before they had things like firing arcs and stuff, so it's like I had to place the weapons either fore or starboard or port or aft, and just, oh my goodness, I mean, again, we would just do everything we could to come up with the most absurd builds for these ships and then pound on each other for hours. And then we
One
play
of
a
my
game.
favorite things about the
And there's playing
ship
the game.
construction manual, especially the second edition of the ship construction manual, was there was no rules in the second edition construction manual for putting crew quarters in. So everything was superstructure. I mean, you could make a destroyer that would had more superstructure than an Enterprise class cruiser, because no crew.
Yeah,
there's no place to put your crew. You couldn't tell how many people served on this thing.
it's like one bridge and engineering, and like everybody like
sleeping in the hallway.
Yeah, basically that's it, and the rest is like solid titanium.
Yeah, that's the thing that my friends, we played that when I was in the Air Force, because that was our role playing. Our Trek role playing then was fast because Last Unicorns didn't even exist yet.
Mm-hmm.
But we do that every Friday, Saturday night, and some nights are just like, well, let's build a ship real quick, because you could build a ship with the construction manual in 20 minutes. Couldn't necessarily do anything with it. No. Like I say, there's no crew, but we can blow the hell out of each other.
Yeah, you don't need crew. You just need guns.
Need
phasers.
Exactly. It's all remote control anyway. They're drones.
Yeah,
they're big 120,000 ton drones.
So, well, let me ask this question then. We've all tried some of this stuff. Did you have what are kind of your likes and dislikes about these two systems? I mean, a couple of you guys have not played the SFB, but what did you like about or not like about either of these two?
Well, I liked SFB for a while because it was all that was there. That's the only, it's like you wanted to play something Star Trek, that was it.
And God help you if you didn't want to, just spend a whole lot of time stalking a Klingon with a Romulan warbird, but
sounds like fun.
It was so the cloaking rules in SFB, they're very detailed.
Yes,
and they will mess you up.
Yeah,
provided you don't blow up first from accidental from some kind of cloaking accident. But I wasn't really into that. I mean, I was into it to the extent that I was because it was all that was there. In '83, when I discovered the role-playing game, that's all she wrote. I mean, I don't think I've watched some people play it, but I don't think I've picked up dice to play SFB in 40 years.
Yeah. What did you? I mean, I think I know the answer to this. What did you dislike about it?
Trying to keep track of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, the paperwork, and I know some guys that were like, they're all engineers. Literally, I mean, they all literally have engineering degrees.
Yeah,
everyone I know who loves this game is an engineer.
Yeah, Steve Cole's a civil engineer. Yeah.
Yeah, right. The guy that Dave Chamberlain, the guy that introduced me to it, he went and got an engineering degree. I mean, we were in high school at the time, but he went off and got his engineering degree. But everyone I know who really digs everything about SFB was an engineer. My dad, if Dad had sat down, Dad was an aeronautical engineer. He discovered he liked flying airplanes better than he liked designing them. But then he went in, got a computer engineering degree and went off and worked for NASA contractors, following the space shuttle contract around for years and years. He'd have loved it if he had actually sat down, but he was never really much into games. But it was the book. It was the bookkeeping that really turned me off on.
Yeah.
Would you say that the that Starfleet Battles was more of an intellectuals game compared to the tactical combat simulator?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot. It takes a big brain pan to run it, and also a certain amount of tolerance, but to all the rules and all the complexities that can happen. So, I mean, I guess you could say it's an intellectuals game. I don't.
Yeah, sounds like a rule set I got to memorize now.
It is
challenge of memorizing it.
It is. If you're into detail and you like to base your tactics around a multitude of factors, then it's the game for you. Because it's just this, like you said, the sheer amount of things that you're having to keep track of and that you can do. I mean, like one example for the Federation photon torpedoes. They take 2 turns to arm, and they do 8. They cost 4 points of energy, and then you have to hold them if you don't want to shoot them. That's 2 points of energy. They do 8 points if you hit somebody with them, unless you overload them, and then they do 16 points, but they cost more to charge and more to hold. And if you overload them and you shoot somebody up too close, you get blowback damage on your own ship. So all this stuff has to be factored in just for that one thing. How close do I get? Because
sounds like fun.
In the game, the photons are one of these things like you really have to get right up close and personal for them to have a decent chance to hit.
I would dare say that if I tried to play Starfleet Battles, that I would probably walk away from the table dragging my knuckles.
I mean, I wasn't joking when I said it felt like you needed to be an actuary.
Oh yeah. Like I said, being an engineer or a tax accountant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it literally is filling out a spreadsheet. I'm not joking. It's you start at the top with this is how much power you have, and then you account for every bit of it going down the columns. This much going to weapons, this much going to movement, this much going to shields, this much going to reinforcing shield. Boom, 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 boom. Turn after turn after turn after turn, just to keep track. And then there's a whole nother.
So the key is to win quickly, so you don't have to do too much accounting.
Exactly. Yeah. But then there's a whole nother one that keeps track of the actual ship. And the way they do damage is as your ship takes damage, you automatically start marking off crew. And the less crew you have, the less effective you are. So, I mean, it is amazingly detailed. It truly is. But it is not for the faint of heart, I'll say that. But so how about the other game? I mean, Patrick, you and Lars and all of us have played the Starship Combat Simulator.
Yeah, of course that was the 90s. So,
what did you like and dislike about that?
I like the greater variety of shit because I started with the original series when I was 4. I remember Dad, watching this with me. I probably watched it before then, but I start remembering. I remember watching the animated series when it first came out in '73. So, and then the movies came around. And it's like, oh, look at all the pretty starships, and you had that in the FASA simulator. And it was a lot less complex. There was still, FASA started life as a war game company. Mm-hmm. Role-playing came second to them, too. So, that's one of the reasons they lost their license. But that's a separate issue altogether. We'll cover that some other time if you want to. But that there's still, for my taste, I mean, I always like the role playing aspect more than the combat aspect. But if you wanted to blow crap up, that was a good game to do it with.
Yeah, it was.
That was a good game, and it was a lot. There's a lot of keeping track of stuff in the Starship Combat Simulator. Nothing like SFP.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get through real fast, and like I say, there wasn't nearly as much crap to keep track of.
Yeah. How about you, Lars? What did you like and dislike about it?
Well, I mean, it was the only game I really had known how to play, and it was the only one I had. So, I mean, that has a big effect on the amount of influence it had on me. But what I did like about it was it did feel like you were taking part in something, or you were being a part of that universe. And of course, back then, back in the the late 80s, early 90s, Star Trek was still very, very niche. And the fact that you could be a part of it, it was just mind-boggling. So, like I said, Patrick and I had spent many an evening just sitting there
blasting away
and just fighting and just going for it, and just because it was something for us to do, because we didn't have a role-playing game group for a while. And it just
the top half of the screen was literally everybody playing games for a while.
So again, the ability to, I guess, immerse yourself in the universe was the real attraction for me. Now, it's hard to say. I mean, one thing I know we're not really talking much about the computer era for these things, but these games like Starfleet Battles and the Starship Combat Simulator did have direct influence on the software that became available. Naturally, Starfleet Battles influenced Starfleet Command, and then some of the elements that the Tactical Combat Simulator or Starship Combat Simulator influenced was the current Star Trek Online, which even took a lot of the concepts and built on them even more, which kind of transitioned for us to be able to play in a way that none of the board games had allowed us to do before, which was to fight in 3 dimensions. And
the STO is not true 3-dimension, but
I mean, it's but again, it's sort of it's more so than you can do in a game. I mean, of course you're playing everything on a flat surface, so it's hard. It's hard to really do combat in a 3rd dimension when you're in that situation. But also one other
that's what tripped up Khan.
Yeah, that's right, because he's a 2-dimensional thinker. But the
only movie he appeared in.
The other thing for me that I really liked was, and I believe it was Ralph Partha, that the company that did the miniatures for that game, they did some amazingly nice pewter miniatures for those ships. That was pretty awesome. So the full color tiles, the layout with it being hexed was good, and of course the range of miniatures you could buy, even though they at the time cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, they still do.
Well, I'm sure
try to track them down now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I see on various social medias, guys are still creating and 3D printing ships from that game.
Oh yeah, they are.
Oh yeah,
it's amazing. So how about you, Patrick?
I don't really have a lot to add, because mostly it was just I was playing with Lars, so this is what he wanted to play. Hey, let's do some Star Trek. This is more exciting than the show anyway, because back then I was not near the Star Trek fan that I am now. I will say that up front. He was the Star Trek guy. I was the Star Wars guy.
Okay. We still are, but he's now more of a Star Trek person than he was before.
Yeah. Well, that's because the sequel trilogy came out. And that pretty much ended it.
Yeah. Well, I remember, as a kid, I mean, I watched Star Trek on television and I saw the motion picture in the theater. And I think, like everybody at the time, I was underwhelmed.
And you
And
didn't stay
then,
awake
Oh,
during it. Yeah.
yeah,
I was 13 years old when I saw that thing in the theater, and I loved. I mean, to me, to this day, the 7 most beautiful words in the English language are "forward thrusters." Mr. Sulu, take us out.
yeah.
That was the
So,
most exciting parts of the show. Was
yeah, so we had an episode a while back about what our favorite movies were. I was the only one that picked that one as, as
Yeah.
one of my
and
favorites.
we mocked you mercilessly
They
for it
did.
because
I
it's
took
And
perfect.
I took a beating.
to me,
for
it's still the most Star Trek of any of the Star
Yes.
Trek movies.
Yep.
that. It is.
Yeah,
Although
it's
I
the
did
most
not-
intellectual. Yeah, for sure.
You know,
But then I saw
for all its flaws, and I'm not saying that it's perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But,
Or easy to stay awake through.
Well,
I had
then
no
I
trouble
saw
with it.
Wrath of Khan when it came out, and that was the one that really kind of kicked me into overdrive for loving Star Trek. So when this game came out, we'd been playing SFB. We tried it, and I remember playing it like the first time, and we all just looked at each other and said, "Okay, this is what we're playing from now on." You know, and I really liked some of the ways, to get into specifics. I liked the way they handled a lot of the rules. You know, Starfleet battles, you can pound the hell out of a ship with 20, 30 photon torpedoes and not actually do any serious damage because of the way damage works. And that's Star Trek Tactical Simulator. You hit with 2 or 3 of those, they're done. They explode.
Game over. Yeah.
And that's how it should be, so it was much faster and the weapons were much more lethal than they were in Starfleet battles. And again, I love the fact that, I can play the Excelsior. I could play the Klingon Bird of Prey. You could play these ships that you'd seen on screen. You couldn't do that with, SFB. So, I mean, I really, I have a soft spot in my heart for both of them. A lot of nostalgia. But if I had to sit down right now, so we're going to play one of these games, hands down, it would have to be the FASA game because I do not remember how to play either one. And I remember being able to learn that one in about 30 minutes, enough to start playing it. So, yeah.
I'm going to remember that.
So does anybody have a favorite particular design of a ship from either game that they really liked?
I'll just go first because I couldn't remember anything at this point. That has been too many years since, and I do not remember.
That's fair.
The
Probably
Romulan
just
Wing
whatever
Defender.
I built.
The Wing
Yes.
Defender.
The Wing Defender. I was going to say that because that was one of the most unique Romulan ship designs because it really embraced the idea of their obsession with birds.
It's absolutely one of the most. And I don't know what happened to it. It vanished in a move or got stolen by an X or something. But my miniature of a winged defender. I went so far at one point as to convert that over to a space frame for Star Trek Adventures.
Nice.
Which is up on the internet somewhere. I can't remember exactly where. I know it's on Continuing Mission somewhere, but there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff on Continuing Mission.
Yeah.
Finding things can be a chore.
I remember that one. And if I can find it, yeah, here it is right here. I'll send it, Lars. If you want to try to pop it on the screen, you can. But I did commissioning work for miniatures, and I still have the pictures of that one and Klingon Bird of Prey that I did. Now the pictures aren't that great because I took them with a crappy old, early edition digital camera.
Give me just a moment. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
I think you're right. It was one that really did kind of give that really bird.
Yeah, the Wing Defender really stood out. Though a couple of ones I remember most of all were, in fact, another one. It wasn't quite as bird oriented, but the Z1 Nova
Yeah,
for the
the
Romulans.
battleship. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
That thing,
Yeah,
that
that battleship.
thing. I'm here to tell you something. That thing is terrifying.
Yeah, if of the battleships in the game, it
You
was
see
probably
that?
the
You see that thing?
nastiest one.
You see that thing turn up? It's oh crap! It's time to leave.
Yeah, yeah, it was a
Time to
brute.
go.
Uh, I think so. One of my favorites was, and don't get me wrong, the FASA, especially as they started going along and they started getting into the TNG stuff, came out with some ass ugly designs. They
Oh,
really were.
some of the TNG ships. Oh my god,
Yeah,
those things
I
were
don't.
hideous. I've got
Yeah,
I've got the officer's manual over
yeah, exactly.
across the across the room, and I'm like,
They were
what the
awful.
hell were they thinking?
Yeah, they were awful.
Oh,
But,
the yeah. Well, and then the thing is, the funny thing is, on that note, the TNG officers manual has got to be as rare as hen's teeth these days.
probably so. Yeah, I mean, I had one, but I mean, I may still have some of this stuff up in the attic in a box. I'd have to.
I've got. I don't have all the adventures, but I've got I've got like the Romulan player supplement for the game. I've got both editions of the Klingon supplement. I've got I think I've still got the Orions. I've got all the ship manuals. I've got the two next generation books that FASA did, and
They did the officers manual and then the season 1 guide, right?
season one player's guide, and
I think that was it, wasn't it? That was the last.
that was it.
That was about it. Yeah.
Those two books were the last things they published because they got their license yanked because it was turning the war game side of things got a hold of it. There she is.
I just remember reading that book, and whoever wrote that was definitely a TNG fanboy. Like they bagged on the original show about how, like, I remember they were talking about the Enterprise B, which at the time they just assumed it was a regular Excelsior. Like it had lost like so many people over its career, and it was nothing. It was just a few people. Says that's a far cry from their predecessor. I'm like, oh, what a dig at the original show.
So
And
there you go.
we're
There's
talking
your.
about Captain.
There we go.
Yeah, there they are. Yeah, that's the one. Those were both commission pieces I did years ago.
Oh,
That's
those
nice.
are great.
Beautiful. It's
Those are great.
purdy. You got a real purdy ship.
They had somebody wrote in there. It was when they were doing the character profiles in the book about Captain Picard, about his baldness accentuates his personality. I was like, you guys are really hung up on this, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like, holy crap, guys.
Oh yeah, there are some definite. I don't know if that's what.
It's almost as
But
bad.
I'm
as
pretty
Purple
sure.
Enterprise.
I'm pretty sure the approvals guys. I'm not sure that those books got put through approvals correctly.
They felt very rushed.
Yeah.
And the blatant military stuff that they were doing by that point. I think they were about to do something with like a Starfleet Marine, a dedicated book to Starfleet Marines, and Paramount pulled the plug. I don't know if Gene was directly involved or not.
It would not surprise me.
Well, I can't. I'm trying to remember the timeline of everything. I can't remember when Gene wore out his welcome at Paramount. But I know they did a great deal of, and it always kind of surprised me that Gene would have that much of an objection. But looking at some of the stuff they were putting out at FASA towards the end, it's like, no, I can see it.
Yeah,
I can definitely see it at this point because some of it was just. I mean,
I don't recall what it was called, but there was a planned supplement for the Starship Combat Simulator that was supposed to be massive. And I would have to go back and check it. I mean, it probably makes no difference to anybody watching this. I mean, but I want to say, yeah. I mean, there were two things because that was the Starfleet Marine Guide or supplement, and that one were the two that I was looking forward to the most, and then suddenly FASA just stopped altogether making supplements.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't realize at the time that they'd had their license pulled from them for leaning much more towards a militaristic side. And, the great bird of the galaxy said, Dad, that's no es bueno.
Yeah.
I,
I think we'll have to do that
can't-
as a topic at some point.
It is. Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have talked this one out. Any last thoughts before we kind of wrap up?
Well, I want to say that despite the fact that the games are old, I still feel like they would, even today, like if they were still making them today, they would still hold the same amount of interest and charm that they had when we were younger, simply because, at least for the one I played, the rules were simple enough that you could go back to it a time and time again and not get tired of it. It was I would say broad enough that it allowed you to come up with a lot of great combinations and different ways to play the game, but at the same time still simple enough that once you learned the rules, you didn't really forget the rules.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I have a soft spot in my heart for both. And if I read in the news anywhere that ADB, shut down and Starfleet Battles not being produced anymore, I would be sad. Because I do respect the guys that make the game. I do have kind of a love-hate relationship with it. I love the idea behind it, but for me, it's just too much to try to play. But any other thoughts, guys?
I think we pretty much talked this one out. So whenever you're ready.
I agree. Well, now that we've shared our thoughts about Starship combat games to an excessive degree, let us know what you think. Did we get it right? Is there more to discuss? Did we miss anything? Well, thank you for joining us here on Treknicity, where we do the deep dive on all things Star Trek multiverse. I'm your host, Mike Raper. With me are my hosts, Patrick Murray, Lars DeSenza, and our special guest host today, Patrick Goodman. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Treknicity.com, as well as visiting all of our socials listed here. Find us on your favorite podcast service, such as Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. If you have any ideas for future episode subjects, please feel free to email us at show@Treknicity.com or DM us on any of our social media accounts. And as always, rock out with your Spock out. Until next time.